Hi guys, so here are the two left-wingers from Novara Media, and look, I'm just going to show you the video and then I'm going to come back with some responses, because this just demonstrates why the Labour Party are in trouble. So let's see what they had to say.
I'm going to say Kent, for the record.
Okay. Anyway, let's go to the next video, because the surprise question, which has been challenging all of the leadership candidates, it's not what policies they will put in their manifesto, what Labour policies they will dump, nothing so serious and substantial as that. It has been, how would they rank their predecessor, well, not yet their predecessor, how would they rank Jeremy Corbyn out of 10? We're going to look at all those respective answers now.
I thought Jeremy was one of the most honest, kind, principled politicians that I ever met. And well, I'd give him 10 out of 10 because I respect him and I supported him all the way through. So what we can't ignore is that Jeremy was absolutely savaged by the press. His character was taken to pieces.
Yesterday when we interviewed Rebecca Long-Bailey, she gave Jeremy Corbyn 10 out of 10 for his leadership. What would you give him?
I'm not going to rank Jeremy Corbyn.
Well, Clive Lewis gave him 6 out of 10. Come on, you've been around long enough to rank Jeremy Corbyn's leadership. You sat alongside him. What do you think he scores?
I'm not going to rank Jeremy Corbyn. He's a colleague, he's a friend, and he's led us through some really difficult times in the Labour Party. And I don't want to trivialise that by giving him a number out of 10. I respect him and thank him for what he's done, but I'm not going to get involved in that.
Okay, yeah, so it wouldn't be 10 out of 10.
What would it be?
I would say maybe a 6 out of 10, because I'm going to say...
What mistakes did he make?
I think there were mistakes made in terms of our position on Brexit and actually sticking to a position, understanding that this was a right-wing, hard right project, and we think we should have stuck to our guns on our position from 2016. That's one of my own personal views.
I remain convinced that Jeremy is not anti-Semitic, but I think that clearly we completely failed when it came to dealing with anti-Semitism in the party, and that was a failure of leadership. And Jeremy knows my views on this, and I'm afraid I would not give him more than 2 out of 10 in relation to that. But when it comes to principle, bringing people into the party, firing up the party, bringing us back to speaking from our hearts, I'd give him 10 out of 10. Losing an election is probably the most important thing, by which you would measure a leader. And obviously we lost very, very badly. And on that basis, I would give him on that 0 out of 10. What else could I do?
I mean, let's start with Emily Thornberry, actually, because what's particularly bizarre about that answer is what Starmer did quite well is he's like, this is a ridiculous question, I'm not going to respect it by giving a proper answer, so I'm going to say I'm not going to take part in this. What Emily Thornberry did was like, this is a ridiculous question, I'm going to give you an incredibly long answer so that you all forget what could have possibly been my point there. So if what we want is a leader who has some message discipline, it was often lacking with Jeremy Corbyn. That wasn't a particularly good display.
No. I mean, Keir Starmer, he is a QC, former Director of Public Prosecutions, very talented lawyer. You will expect him to be, if not effective with his words, who is always restrained. He won't make big errors talking, because that's the bread and butter of a lawyer. Well, and he showed that with that answer.
Well, what's strange about the Emily Thornberry and Clive Lewis ones, the Clive one wasn't as bad as Emily's, but they knew that question was going to come up, because at least Rebecca Long-Bailey's 10 out of 10 was clearly the worst answer of all three. I mean, if the leader of the Labour Party has taken Labour into its worst defeat in terms of seats, not in terms of vote share, but in terms of seats since 1935, it's not particularly credible to give them 10 out of 10, especially if you were trying to create some distance between yourself and this idea that you are just the continuity candidate. There's not much... I mean, if you're saying there's no room for improvement about someone who just took us to the biggest defeat in 80 years.
That's not true.
It's not a great start to a campaign.
It's such a dumb take. Come on.
It's not a dumb. That's the take that the whole country will take. It led the news, because why it was damaging is because this whole idea.
No.
of 10 out of 10.
I'm talking about the whole worst election for 80 years. It's not true. It's ridiculous.
Oh, okay. Well, what? Because you're saying because the vote share was reasonably high.
Not even the vote share. Labour got 10.2 million votes, and so anybody who says we need to dismiss everything we've just said. We won amongst under 45s. We've got 10 million votes. We've got more votes in this election than in 2015, 2010, 2005, we need to get rid of all of it. Well, that's just stupid. I think, and the appeal of Starmer is, not for necessarily me, but for most people, you know, we got some things right.
Yeah, obviously don't get rid of all of it.
We got some things.
But, okay. This idea that we won in a way, or we didn't, it wasn't a complete and utter disaster. It was a complete and utter disaster. This idea of ignoring reality.
Things wrong. This is a launch pad to something else.
Yeah.
So I think that whole worse than 80 years. I mean, this is ridiculous.
But in terms of seats, it was. So you can look at it in terms of vote share, it was. In terms of seats, it was.
That's because of our stupid electoral system.
But then
sure.
Okay, but that's what you have to work within. And I'm sorry to say this, but the Labour Party had a choice in getting rid of this dysfunctional political system of first past the post, and they voted against it. Now, I'm happy that there are members of the Labour Party who are reconsidering that, but I'm pointing at you as the Labour Party. You supported this because it benefited you. This idea that, we increased our vote and we increased our vote and we increased our vote. Okay, but that meant nothing because the system was dysfunctional. But you were also part of the problem.
That's just like saying Hillary Clinton had a better result than Obama.
No, but Keir Starmer might take Labour into the next election. I mean, they might get 11 million and they'll have fewer seats. I'm not going to say, oh, well, he's Ed Miliband did better than Gordon Brown. He got 1 million more votes, but because of our electoral system, Labour, the Tories won a majority.
But this is the Hillary Clinton argument.
Okay, but now you're going back onto the idea that increasing the vote doesn't make any difference. But before you were saying, look, we've increased the vote. We've increased the vote. Now you're saying that if Keir Starmer increased the vote, it means nothing. Decide which side you're on.
It's saying, actually, Hillary Clinton did a great campaign because she won the popular vote. No, what you have to do well in an election is you have to win according to the rules which are set in your electoral system.
Sure.
It's meaningless that Hillary Clinton got 5 million more votes than Donald Trump because she lost where it mattered, which was the electoral college.
I don't buy that either. Do you know why? Because generally speaking in the United States, if you win the popular vote, you win the presidency.
That hasn't been the case for, I think...
What reality is this guy living in? It doesn't matter if you won the popular vote. Because it doesn't automatically mean you win the presidency. You need to win the electoral college. Winning the popular vote does not make one bit of difference. You have to win the electoral college. The other presenter here makes much more sense. He understands reality. This guy here, he doesn't understand reality. He's attempting to create his own reality and say, actually, we won the election. Labour won the election. Jeremy Corbyn won the election in my reality.
I think about 3 of the last 8...
I think until George W. Bush, it hadn't happened for a very, very, very long time.
And it doesn't matter how long it didn't happen for. It happened.
Hadn't happened for a very, very long time. Whereas in this country... Yeah,
the thing was, sorry, what I was thinking of is that the Republicans haven't won the popular vote for, I think...
Since, 92.
For fucking 8. Well, because George W. Bush won it in 2004.
Oh, sorry,
won the popular vote in 2004, but they've only won the popular vote once since 1988.
88. They didn't win in 92 with George?
No, because Bill Clinton won in 1992.
Oh, no, good, you're so right, yes, 88 with Bush. But my point is, in this country, on the other hand, the party which got, the highest portion of the vote ever, which was Labour in 1951, didn't form a government. So I don't buy that, it's just like Clinton, because actually in the United States...
I know, and the problem is what? The problem is first past the post. The problem is safe seats. The problem is marginal constituencies. And how could you fix a lot of that problem? You can fix a lot of that problem with proportional representation, which the Labour Party have been against. Now, we can understand why the Tories are against it, because it benefits them. But the Labour Party have been losing, but they've maintained support for PR, for first past the post.
Massive, just because of the way the country works geographically, in terms of its political geography, these huge populous states, California and New York, which also dominate its cultural life, I don't think that's analogous to Britain. I think you can meaningfully talk about, the vote share in Britain in a way that you can't in the US.
You can meaningfully talk about vote share in both places. And you can meaningfully talk about electoral colleges and seats in both places.
Look, let's compare this to 1983, right? When Labour got a smaller share of the vote. They got fewer votes, even though, obviously that's a long time ago, so maybe that's not a fair like-for-like kind of comparison. Mm-hmm. And they lost the vote amongst under 35s. Labour's won the vote amongst under 35s. I think it's entirely, clearly there was an Andy Beckett argument in The Guardian. Clearly 1983 was a much worse general election for the Labour Party than 2019. Clearly.
But it doesn't matter. This idea of, okay, let's look at how we lost, not why we lost. Oh, we lost in this seat and we lost in this. There's this idea of looking at how, but not why. It's all, okay, we lost under 35s. We gained, we won under 35s, but we lost over 50s. We lost and then that's it. That's where it stops. But any of this complaining is pointless if you support a dysfunctional system, and unfortunately the Labour Party have supported it.
Win the next election. The Tories have a majority of 80, right? The Tories after 1983 had a majority of 144. How can you say this situation
even in terms
is
of
worse
seats,
than
the
that
SNP
situation?
do make it a kind of exceptional situation. Anyway.
It's like my car is destroyed or my car is obliterated. Well, one is better than the other.
Exactly.
All right, fine. Let's talk about Clive Lewis again. Something that I thought was a bit strange in that. What's been the weirdest part of Clive Lewis's pitch for me is this insistence on the idea that Brexit is a hard right project. Now, I've never really agreed with this. I've always thought that Brexit is way too multifaceted to sort of pigeonhole it as just a hard right project. I think there were so many things that were going on that any characterization that simplistic is not a good reflection of what happened. At the same time, on a strategic level, if you're trying to become the leader of the Labour Party after the argument for Brexit has won twice dramatically, once in 2016 and once in 2019, and the campaign for a second referendum has failed catastrophically, then why the hell you would go on TV trying to...
Okay, something I have to say here now. This idea that the campaign for a second referendum failed. Why did it fail? This seems to be a running gag here. You say something failed or something won, but you don't look at why. And I've said this before. There was an opportunity to have a second referendum, but unfortunately, and I know I'm going to take some flack for this, I always do, but unfortunately, Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party wouldn't get behind it. How could it have happened? And I'm getting tired of talking about this because it's going back over old stories and old ground that we've covered many, many times before. If there had been a chance, an opportunity to try, at least, to have a government of national unity, Brexit could have been taken off the table. And then Jeremy Corbyn could have run and perhaps succeeded much better than he did. At least with Brexit away, he could have improved his position. Now, this idea that Brexit was a right-wing policy, it's not completely wrong. It was adopted by the right wing, but it didn't start out that way. It was a group of people who want to turn the UK into a low regulation, low tax economy to benefit them. But these people are not ideological. They care about making money. So for them, they realized, okay, in order to achieve this, we need to sell the idea to whom? We need to sell it to, it's better the right wing, because the right wing are people who are easily motivated to get out and vote for something that they can be convinced is bad. It's easier to convince right-wing people that something is bad than to convince them that something is good. Immigration, bad. European Union, bad. Climate change, doing something about climate change, bad. Foreign people coming, bad. Taxes, bad. Everything, it's very easy to tell people, convince people that something is bad and get them to get out and vote for it, to vote against it, or to vote against the good thing, or to vote for something if they're motivated that what they're voting against is bad. And of course they were able to convince people that the European Union is bad in a very simple way. It's just bad. We need to get rid of it. And the entire campaign was about how bad the European Union is. Immigration, bad. Taxes, bad. European influence, bad. Everything bad, bad, bad. And for the right, they hook on to things like that. They don't look at what's positive, they look at what's negative. And they're easily convinced by negative ideas. And that's probably why it was more, why Lewis here is saying that it was a right-wing issue or a hard right issue. It's not so much it was hard right, but it was the hard right that, and the right and hard right that bought into it easier. It was easy for them to buy into it in a sense, because the people selling it knew who to sell it to. In another universe, Brexit could have been a left-wing issue if it was sold in that framework.
Reopen all the wounds of Brexit to me is completely bizarre. I don't know why you don't have a deflationary answer like what Keir Starmer is giving and like what Becky Long-Bailey is giving, to be fair to her, which is this idea of Brexit is done, we have to move on, we have to build now a positive, open vision of society, which is welcoming to immigrants, but which accepts that Britain is leaving the European Union and which accepts that we've got to make Brexit work. And I don't know what Clive Lewis is thinking. I don't know if it's the people advising him. We know that there's a lot of people from the Another Europe is Possible wing of the party who are involved in that campaign. But yeah, for me, that's where that campaign is going wrong. Not that that's not why he's getting the nominations.
Can I just also say, yes, that's being communicated differently by Starmer and by Clive Lewis, but Keir Starmer's position right now in the transitional arrangement is pretty bad. It's a Remainy position on the transitional arrangement. So the transitional arrangement is the arrangement. I did a video about this for Novara Media. You can check it out. We leave the European Union this month. Then we enter a transitional arrangement where we're still subject to its rules. That will elapse, I think, end of December. It's going to have to almost certainly be extended, or we have no deal, or Boris Johnson will basically accept the customs union, right? It could be any of those three, right? And they all have problems and possibilities. And Keir Starmer said, I think last week, he was going to propose an amendment which said, well, they're not going to sort a new trade agreement by December, let's extend it. Why would you do this? Yeah. Why would you allow Leave.eu on its Facebook page memes to go, see, Labour won't let us get Brexit done? Why would you do that? And it just...
I actually agree with this presenter here. It was a bad idea. This idea of attempting to add an amendment to stop a no deal. It just feeds into the narrative on the right, in the Conservative Party, in their supporters, that the Labour Party want to block Brexit, even though Brexit cannot be blocked. It's a terrible hill to die on. It's going into battle without a gun. Going into battle against tanks without a gun. It was an idiotic position to take. Now, I think it was Jeremy Corbyn that actually, introduced the amendment. Now, I could be wrong here. It's probably Jeremy Corbyn and Keir Starmer, because Keir Starmer is the shadow secretary for Brexit. But it was crazy. Why would you do that? You have no political capital, and you should be building political capital, and instead you're throwing it away on something that will be defeated. I understand attempting to stand up to the government, but not here. Use it for something better, something that you could actually win public support on. You're not going to win public support by attempting to stop Brexit, because Brexit is not going to be stopped. I'm sorry if there are people who still believe that Brexit can be stopped, but it can't. The UK is leaving on the 31st of January and then starts the transition period, just as he has said here. He's completely correct. And any attempt to amend that or to change that is going to fail because Boris Johnson has an 80-seat majority.
Shows to me, and we can talk about this later as the show progresses, you know, I don't think Keir Starmer's necessarily as left-wing as I would like the next leader to be, but forget that for a minute. It just shows strange political judgment to me. That is an outgrowth of, I think, the sort of flip-flopping on Brexit over 3 years. It's still kind of not stopped. And so, yeah, Clive Lewis is talking about that publicly, but actually in private, I would suspect that Keir Starmer's position isn't that different to Clive Lewis's.
I mean, I agree with you in principle that that's a completely stupid position. And if the Labour Party think that they are going to win or even make Boris Johnson's life difficult by trying to hold up Brexit, because I think he'd probably love nothing more. What the Labour Party should be doing now is saying, look, he's got the majority. We don't want to talk about Brexit. We know that government advisors and civil servants have been told to stop talking about Brexit. So I think if the Conservatives want to stop talking about Brexit, we should stop talking about Brexit as well, move on. And then if the economy fucks up in 3 years' time, just say the Conservatives were shit. You know, you don't have to say, oh, we were right all along about Brexit. But in this particular instance, I don't know the ins and outs of it. Keir Starmer's denying that that's what happened because he's just saying, I just posited it as one possible example, and he thinks that people are briefing against him because they want him to lose.
Still a crazy thing to propose.
Yeah, and I agree. I'll stop the video here because it goes on for an hour and 20 minutes. But I agree. Yeah, it was an idiot take on Brexit. Brexit is happening. You can't stop it. And any attempt to stop it just feeds fuel to the Brexiteers' fire. And it empowers Boris Johnson even more because Boris Johnson can say, look, these people, even though they've lost the election, even though Brexit has been, people have voted for it, we know they haven't, but even though he can say, yeah, people have voted for this election, in this election for Brexit, whatever, these people are trying to stop it. They're sore losers. And he can now, going ahead, he can continue to use that as a stick to beat the Labour Party, and the Labour Party can't defend themselves. So I'm going to stop it here, guys. So let me know in the comments if you, what do you think of this back and forth, and what do you think about the idea of the Labour Party? Are they coming out of the cold? Are they actually, looking inside themselves to understand what went wrong, why it went wrong? And do you think they're going to improve in the next few months? Thanks.